Are you ready to take your beer tasting journey to the next level? Today we're going to talk about 3 very different types of ales and their unique aromas, flavors, and food pairings, and what makes them different from each other. So today we have 3 different ales. We have a blonde ale, an amber ale, and a stout. Let's start with the blonde ale. This is 805 from Firestone Walker. This is a light, easy drinking blonde ale. And so our first impression of this beer is that it's very light in color. It's also going to be very light in flavor. This is the closest thing in the ale world that we really have to a lager. The idea is to make a very clean, easy drinking beer with not a lot of extra flavor being imparted from the yeast. So this is going to go well with a lot of different types of food, probably the most versatile style of ale. But if you're cooking meat, having a hamburger, something like that that has a lot of fat in it, this can be a really good option because it's very light and refreshing and it's not going to be too heavy. So next we have an amber ale from Alaskan Brewing. So as the name implies, we're going to look for a amber, golden, or kind of reddish color out of this beer. And as we pour it, we're going to see that right away. This comes from different specialty malts that are in the brewing process that both impart that color as well as a lot of the flavor to the beer. We're going to look for toasted, roasted, some biscuit, maybe bready flavors, depending on the types of specialty malts used in this beer. And it's going to have a lot more flavor to it than the blonde ale will because of that malt complexity. This is a great example of an amber ale. It has lots of bready, a little bit of biscuit and toast kind of flavors coming through. This is sort of in the middle of the color range of beer where we're starting to add some complexity from these specialty malts and make the beer a little bit more interesting. Amber ales can also be paired with a lot of different types of food. I like to have an amber ale or something along these lines with spicy food because that extra malt sweetness and complexity can kind of help balance out the heat from things like hot wings, Thai food, anything that has that extra kick of heat. Next up we have an oatmeal stout from Samuel Smith Brewing out of the UK. This is a good example of a very dark beer. So this is going to be on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of color and in flavor from the blonde ale. Right away we can see that very dark, almost black color coming through. So now we're on the other end of the spectrum in terms of color, which means we're on the other side of the malt complexity. This is very complex, lots of different flavors coming through when compared to the amber or the blonde. We're gonna see some more roasted, coffee, chocolate kind of notes coming through in a stout. This is an oatmeal stout, which means that there have been some oats added that gives it a little extra fluffiness, for lack of a better word, kind of a body that comes with the beer. So this should be a really interesting one. And yeah, there's lots of chocolate, a little bit of coffee, and kind of toast, almost burnt toast coming through in that, but in a good way. Very pleasant, very complex, especially when I'm comparing it to these other two. So of the 3 styles here, this is definitely the one you want to sip on slowly. It's actually just going to even get better as it warms up a little bit, because you're going to notice more of those complex flavors coming through as the beer warms and more of the aromatics come out of the beer. So take your time with the stout for sure. As we get into the darker beers like stouts, the food pairing options become a little bit narrower, but there's still plenty of things that you can pair it with. You can kind of go for some of the same flavors, so this could be really good with desserts that have chocolate in it, like a brownie, a piece of dark chocolate, or you can go the opposite direction, something like vanilla ice cream, where you get a nice complement between the lightness of the vanilla and the complexity and darkness of the chocolate and roasted flavors of the beer. But a lot of people even like to drink stouts with barbecue, things like ribs and other meats, and find that that's a good combination as well. Subscribe and check out this next video on the brewing process.